Friends, Jimmy LaRose here. We're back for the Best Practice Philanthropist panel. I was on the phone with Jerry Strickland 2 years ago. Been working with the Strickland Family Foundation for years and years, but met the patriarch on the phone. And he shared with me, he said, Jimmy, do you know what one of my favorite things to do is to restrict my giving? And all of the nonprofit executives in the room say, man, the last thing I want is a restricted gift. He said, you want to know what I love to restrict my gifts to? He said, I like to make sure that my gifts are restricted to underwriting the health benefits of nonprofit employees. He said to me, and I explained this to you earlier, but he's the one who shared the number one indicator of a nonprofit's ability to actually accomplish its mission is its capacity to add staff. And how do you add staff if you don't pay health benefits? So when we talk about the Best Practice Philanthropist panel, and we talk about the Best Practice Philanthropist Award, I want you to know it's very thoughtful, it's very meaningful. Jerry was not the type of person who asked the question, how much of my dollar goes directly to the child? He wanted to know, how is this enterprise going to grow? And what can I do to support that aspect of its growth administratively? And he didn't need Jimmy LaRose or Dan Pallotta or a TED Talk to bring him to that conclusion. Now I'm about to share with you that's something very, very interesting, because I've been working with donors for years. And I have had many donors pass away over the years. But on January 20th, Jerry and I were making plans. He got a private jet to fly the family out for this event, and we were continuing to work on the Best Practice Philanthropist panel. And we discovered on February 1st that Jerry Strickland passed away. We were not sure and don't know how to even begin to fathom the loss of that individual in our lives, though we are distant, the influence that he has had on us. And the fact that as much as I worked with Jerry, we've been privileged to work with his different children, whom he loved. Matter of fact, if Jerry had been here or had been on video screen with us, we would have had 3 generations of Stricklands with us. Now we're going to do a couple things now that are very special, but first, would you help me welcome Patia Strickland? Would you help me welcome their granddaughter, Megan, Amy Vance, and Sarah Garrett? I give you the Strickland family. Please come with me.
I need you right now. Yeah, I need you right now. So don't let me down. I think I'm losing my mind now.
I shared with Patia privately in the back. In the green room before the event started, I had this certificate-sized envelope, and I pulled out a check from Jerry Strickland dated January 20th, and he passed on February 1st. So this is a celebratory moment. It is a reverential moment. It is a sober moment. But friends, there is a context here, because this guy knew how to give, raised up a first generation of family members who know how to give, and now has got the grandkids knowing how to give. Would you give him a hand again, please? I'm going to move this chair right to here, and I'm going to introduce the players that are here. Patia is Jerry's oldest daughter, only daughter. Megan is Patia's daughter. Amy Vance, you will read in my book, Reimagining Philanthropy, is our super consultant, Chapter 8. Matter of fact, Chapter 8 of Reimagining Philanthropy is about the Strickland Family Foundation and the way they choose to give. In the person of Sarah Garrett, you have the Phoenix Center, who have been the object of Strickland gifts. So you have Jerry raising up Patia and Patia raising up Megan, and the three of them deciding to bring the gift of the super consultant who does capacity building to the Phoenix Center, whom they love. Does that create an accurate context for this panel? We have a donor, we have a consultant, and we have a nonprofit, and they were all doing the right things. So let's find out what the results are. Patia, how are you?
I'm doing awesome, thank you.
Patia, your dad gave strategically. What causes were most important to your dad? Was there a pattern? Are his causes now your causes? Are your passions the same or different? Where do you invest your philanthropy? Holy mackerel, that's 5 questions.
But it's also going back to the same thing. Yes, we do. We, first of all, look for organizations that need that extra little boost.
Right.
To make it to the next level. We also make sure that it is something near and dear to our heart. The Phoenix Center has to deal with children and families that have dealt with trauma, giving free therapy to children from the ages as young as 3 that have dealt with trauma. So, and a lot of our interests are the same, but not necessarily all the same.
No, but it just felt like to me over the years that I could tell a difference when Dad was bringing us a project to work with him on, or whether you guys were bringing him a project. Do you see what I'm saying there?
Yes.
So what would be a project that you personally brought to the Strickland Family Foundation?
Actually, the Phoenix Center. And then also Teen and Family Services, which deals with high-risk adolescents. And then, because my passions are working with younger adolescents and children in ways that if we can alleviate the trauma as well as break down some of the barriers that could possibly hold them back in life.
Friends, you're actually getting platinum here because you're beginning to understand that there is no such thing as a foundation. There isn't this magical foundation where you then hire this grant writer who's going to send out for you 100 grant letters. And you know what you're going to get in return? You're going to get 100 letters of rejection. All we have here are individuals who are philanthropic that choose to use a tax instrument called a foundation. It comes down to the individual. It comes down to the family and the way the dynamic works. Because as this team began to have certain wins that were being administered and overseen by Sarah, that Patia was running point on with the Family Foundation, here's what Jerry said to me in one of our last conversations. You know what this means now that Sarah's done this? I get to give her more of my money. And I didn't have a sense that Dad, if you will, Dad was monitoring all of this, but not only was he supporting Sarah and Phoenix Center, he was supporting your interest as his daughter. Can you talk about that?
He did take an interest in each and every one of the members of the Family Foundation. He actually we would meet, we would discuss our strategies on how we want to give. One of the things that we discussed continuously, I should say, is that if you do not have the correct people in place at the particular nonprofits, then the nonprofits would not grow. They would not be reaching the people that we are wanting to reach or accomplishing what we call the big goal or the big picture. We wouldn't be able to do that unless you had the right people in place. And you're not going to be able to get those right people unless you do reward the people that are doing the hard work. Because it's not easy dealing with the majority of the people that the nonprofits work with. It takes emotional strain and dedication to work with children that have dealt with neglect and abuse, or adolescents that have drug and alcohol problems. It is emotionally draining, not to mention sometimes physically draining, to be working with those type of children and to have the type of credibility, the patience, the passion to work with those types of people. They need to be rewarded, or you're not going to get the best.
Megan, I feel like you're going to be dessert for this whole thing. I'm very excited about how we're gonna end up with you. I'm gonna stay with what we're going here since you just referenced Sarah here. I'm gonna move the question to Amy right now. We're gonna come back around to Megan. Amy, you're an expert capacity builder, and over the years, different Strickland family members, including Jerry, brought you in to assist on projects. What were their expectations? Share one of your successes.
Sure. Jerry would often call me and say, hey, Amy, I've got a nonprofit I need you to check out. Will you call them? And of course. And I would call, and one of the things that I found that Jerry, Patia, Carter, Whitney, everybody's looking for is a strong leader.
Right.
Absolutely a strong leader. And is there potential in that nonprofit to grow in their community? Is there somebody else doing something the same way? You know, so what are the possibilities? Because there has been a relationship built every time. And it has not been often that I've had to call Jerry back and say, this is not going to work.
Right.
One time. One time that we did, and it breaks my heart because they always pick the best organizations to work with. Just fabulous. So the expectations are for me to do a little research and all of the things that I have to do to find out, is it worth moving forward? And at that point, it is organizational development, making sure that the organization is healthy to move forward into a campaign.
And so the audience knows, this was the Strickland Family Foundation's expectation.
Yes.
That after we all agreed to continue to move forward with the project, not that it had anything to do with us agreeing, I didn't mean to put it that way. They sent us in after they had agreed.
Right.
But there was a big emphasis on OD.
Yes. Yeah, they want to make sure that the organization is healthy from the board up. The first thing that we did together was whittle down their board.
Oh yeah, you did.
And we did it, and everybody was happy when they left. Weren't they? They really were. But to get a board in place that is supportive of the vision that can govern, if you will.
Yes.
Going back to what you said before, earlier today. And then Jerry would always ask me within the first couple of months, have you worked on a staff plan? Have you worked on a staff plan? Because he believed that staff, you said it before, will you say your quote again?
Well, I got it from Jerry.
Yeah.
The number one indicator of a nonprofit's capacity to accomplish its mission is whether or not it's adding staff. And then, is the quality of the staff such that, well, that they're worth hiring? And I'm not even going to ask for a raise of hands in the room on how many nonprofit executives are actually working here without health benefits. That was a deal breaker for Jerry in a particular situation here and there. So, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Because I haven't memorized the quote. I just wanted you to quote again, Jerry. But yes, what is the staff plan? And with Sarah, since she's here, we'll talk about her as a great success because the entire model has been a great success. We have built relationships with donors. We are holding ourselves accountable to donors. We're being transparent. We're doing all the things that we need to do with our donors. And even, you know, I think there's been a misunderstanding because you hear Jimmy say, mission doesn't matter. Mission absolutely matters to our donors, and we respect and steward those donors as they invest in organizations because we have completed organizational development, and those organizations grow by leaps and bounds. That is the respect and the stewardship that we give to donors.
Isn't it we have worked together now? This is our 27th year serving together, Amy Vance and I. The fact that she just said for the videotape that Jimmy said, mission doesn't matter. And since I never in my 27 years have ever uttered the words, mission doesn't matter, I just wanted to make that for the record.
I misquoted you. What you said was money
is more important than mission. And I qualify by saying there is an order of things. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
My apologies.
No. Thank you.
My point was that...
I'm learning about this whole Facebook Live thing now and the Twitter war that we're in right this second.
We are in a Twitter war, aren't we? But we steward those donors because we steward their investment. Because we can't have mission without money, which means we can't have mission without committed, loyal, well-stewarded donors.
Well, I'll grant you this. For the donor, mission is probably a lot more important than money.
Yes, agreed.
Okay.
I would agree.
So here we have a donor. Here we have a person that has been retained by the donor to walk alongside a project that they already are confident in. And friends, here's what this whole issue of the board of directors that we always keep revisiting. It's not about the board. Your organization will succeed with a bad board. Your organization will succeed with a good board. Your board doesn't, I have to be careful here. If you understand that there are no good or bad answers in your board, you are then left with, well, what's wrong? And what's wrong is whether or not you have, wait for it, a strong CEO.
Yes.
The greatest gift a nonprofit board can gift its community is to properly hire for a charity a strong CEO. And we had that in the person of Sarah Garrett in the Phoenix Center. So Sarah, you're both a founder and a strong CEO. I witnessed Jerry give separate gifts to both your programs. I saw him give gifts directly to program, and I also saw him restrict gifts to capacity. He would give gifts to building capacity. Could you explain to our audience the different ways he gave to Phoenix Center, and what are the results?
The Strickland Foundation has been giving to us since we celebrated our 10th year this year as an organization, and I have had a wonderful friendship and relationship with Patia and Jerry Strickland, Linda Strickland, and Megan during most of all of those years. So the Strickland Foundation began by funding specific programs, and for example, a play therapy room, therapeutic camp sessions, but...
No, stop. A play therapy room. Tell us everything.
We haven't talked about what you actually do.
So we serve children and families who've experienced trauma, and we do so in an innovative, holistic way that reaches beyond just the child, but to the family and to future generations, to impact, to touch the future and break the cycle. And at first, the Stricklands funded specific programs, so additional camp sessions, additional projects, but what really helped us to grow our programs was actually the restricted giving to fund raises for staff, increased staff, health benefits for staff, and just in the year that we brought, that we worked with Amy and increased our capacity, we doubled our staff, we doubled our fundraising by 774%, and we doubled the number of kids that we served. Even though they weren't funding a program or project, that was the result.
Can I get a witness, please? Somebody. Sarah, if I could ask this question, is it possible that when you get up in the morning, the most exciting thing in your life may not have been in the past, the idea of building capacity and fundraising? There were other reasons you got involved in Phoenix Center. It wasn't to become a fundraiser, is that right?
That is right, and I felt badly, our first years of operation, I felt badly meeting for with a donor, asking for funds, having a fundraiser, thinking about having a development staff member felt like not a good use of funds,
Right.
but
And it's so classic, isn't it, that she's almost apologetic early on about the idea that we were going to be aggressive about building capacity. And in this case, it took the Strickland Family Foundation, in a sense, to say, we're going to now take some time and invest in this area so that we become, and wait for it, so that we become sustainable.
That was one thing that we also wanted to make sure of, is that if something does happen, like my father passing or me passing or one of my children, that the Phoenix Center will be able to take what we have been able to give them in the sense of bringing Amy in, raising the salaries, paying for a website, bringing in a development person, be able to sustain themselves, helping people help themselves, be able to actually continue to grow and
Patia,
prosper.
did you say earlier that somewhere, whether it's missionally or it's in writing, somewhere in Strickland Family Foundation collaterals is the term people learning helping people help themselves?
Yes, that's in part of our mission statement. My father always believed that we, as the Strickland Foundation, was the pebble. The pebble drops through the river and lands at the bottom. But what happens on top is the ripple effect that continues out. So we are just basically the rock that falls down to the bottom. But it's hopefully what we are helping these nonprofits do is continue the ripple effect to touch others as time goes on.
The idea that this family understands unapologetically, because what I haven't shared with you is where the Strickland Family Foundation success originates in. Jerry is the author of the book, and you're going to want to write this down. Turnarounds. Why don't you explain what Dad did for a living? And that'll help make all of this contextually make more sense.
Where do you want me to start?
Just the nature of Dad's business and what did, as I read Turnarounds, Dad would work with energy companies.
Yes, he would go into the different refineries and do what they call turnaround jobs, which is basically updating all of the equipment that's there.
By the way, this is an industry term. It's not some sort of hashtag metaphor word. In the energy industry,
Yes.
in the oil business, you can hire a firm to come and perform a turnaround.
Correct.
Okay,
and
take it
that's
from there.
basically updating all of the equipment, bringing it up to code, restorating it or doing whatever it needed to be done. Well, back when my father was first of all, let me go back even further. My father came from a very poor family, and he worked very hard at doing everything in life. And when he started Altair Strickland, he was in 76, I think. Trying to think now back when it was. 72 was Wilson Strickland, then it became Altair Strickland. His company philosophy was that employees came first, that you basically became family, and that you respected them and you treated them as such. And he had the most loyal employees, staff members, you name it. Everybody wanted to work for him because he treated you with respect. It doesn't matter if you were the tool guy on the on the job site to the CEO of the company. He treated you all the same. That was one of his genuine qualities that he had.
Okay, so this transfers down. Megan, you're in this culture, you're in this whole Strickland family culture thing. And if I may, Dad started this business. This is his first generation of wealth. Correct. The Strickland wealth starts with Jerry. We're not talking about dynastic wealth. We're talking about Jerry. And we have Patia. Now we're here with Megan. And how old are you now?
I'm 24.
You're 24. Mm-hmm. How has it been, you being immersed in this Strickland Family Foundation culture, how has it affected you personally and your ideas about nonprofits?
Okay, yeah, so I was going to start off by saying that in 8th grade, Pops, as all the grandkids called him, required us all to start doing community service. We were required to do 60 hours a year with a nonprofit that he approved. And that started from 8th grade all the way up through high school and college. And by doing that, he was helping us learn how fortunate we were to be in the place that we are.
Right.
And really just open our eyes to the world around us. And by doing this, he helped pay for our college. And it, for me personally, showed me a world that I didn't know existed because I had grew up a little sheltered, and I fell in love with it. I fell in love with helping people, with giving back. And one thing that I didn't realize that my grandpa was doing until recently was that he was planting this seed in each one of the grandkids' minds that this is what you should be doing. He taught us to be philanthropic. He taught us to give back, to love everyone around us despite, shortcomings or inabilities. And, one thing that has been drilled in my mom and Sarah's head recently is believe beyond limitations.
Say that again.
Believe beyond limitations. Everybody is more than they appear to be. And so after having volunteered all these hours and, falling in love with the Phoenix Center along with a few other organizations, I decided to pursue a degree in social entrepreneurship at Belmont in Nashville.
Name the degree again.
Social entrepreneurship.
Is that an undergrad degree, a Bachelor of Arts?
Yes.
A Bachelor of Arts?
You can get a BA or BS.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just give me the whole name of the degree one more time.
Social entrepreneurship.
Okay, it's just called social. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, and there's different concentration. I've chosen to go with economic development because I want to continue the family business with turnarounds and help
Right.
increase capacity building and sustainability, because that's my whole life is everything my grandpa, my mom, every other family member has ever really taught me is how to help others grow, how to help find people's strong suits and develop those further, and just seeing the best in people and helping them thrive.
Okay, so here's what's fun. Influences. It sounds like grandfather connected whether or not you were going to get a college fund based on whether or not you put in community service hours. That's great stuff. You end up responding to that directive and you immerse yourself in community service. You're influenced it, you celebrate it, you enjoy it. You are even willing to take a peek now at this point in your life, despite all the other things that are ahead of you, that you're going to dedicate some of your education to this bachelor's in social entrepreneurship. Here's what I would be threatened by if I was your professor. You're coming from an actual family of donors and givers. And you're sitting in the classroom, and it doesn't really matter what is being taught or what your fellow students are saying, because you're actually out there already having lived it.
Well, it does matter because everybody...
Oh, it does matter what you're being taught? I apologize.
Yeah. Well, because everybody has a different perspective on things, and I'd lie if I didn't say that I was asked to leave the classroom a few times for, my, outside thinking. But it's, there are...
You just underplayed that. Did she just underplay that?
I did. There's some other people in the classroom that they think very differently than I do, and it's the whole, what my grandfather did was he brought those people who had different thinking all into the same place where they would, become the best.
Separate and critical thought is a sign of a healthy family. I think I'm putting you on the spot here. Matter of fact, tell us what's happening or what you're learning in the college classroom, whether it's good or bad. I'm sure it's probably, maybe it's wonderful, but tell us what's happening as you pursue this degree in social entrepreneurship.
Yeah, so one of the things that it's been an ongoing discussion is impact measurement. How do you do that? Some people do it by how much money did we save the people we're serving, if it's education, what was the growth level of their knowledge and whatnot. But one of the primary focuses, more of the negative side of it is, for example, free giving. The impact of that is that if you give so much for free, you're potentially causing somebody else their job. Somebody that, a farmer who grows a certain crop, if you give that town or village that crop, that farmer's going to be out of business. And so it's little things like that. It's really looking how, at the
No, that's
ripple effect of
thought-provoking. What you're saying is the charitable act in helping this village could be at the cost of somebody else's ability to live.
Yeah, and it's not to say that free giving isn't great to an extent, though. It's...
However, the Strickland family has said, we would rather help a person build some sort of capacity that is independently sustainable.
Yeah, so we're about teaching a man to fish. You want to help these people be able to do things for themselves and to share that knowledge with other people, as opposed to, just kind of doing it for them, because our grandpa never really gave us anything. We always had to work for it, whether we realized it or not. There was always a catch-22 with, whatever it was that you were asking for, he was willing to give you. There was, it wasn't ever going to come free. And she, continued that practice with us. So, it's thinking about how your decisions really affect a community or an individual or even the environment, and, just how you can build yourself and your organization in a way to kind of cover all of those tracks, or the risk of harming another person or community.
It is very contemplative, it is very thoughtful. All of this stuff is complex, and you're not just broad stroking it. Okay, so here, with all of this being said, here's a simpler question. Since you are our future, what is one project that you have found yourself attracted to that you are now beginning to bring the Strickland family resources to? What's something you're doing?
Well, I spend my summers over at the Phoenix Center. So I work with their camps, and something that's been a long-term project is, them getting their own facility, and I'm so excited for the day that finally happens. And that would mean that, they would be able to, potentially hire more staff, work with more children, have their own camp programming, equine therapy, and, all these other great resources to help and serve the children.
Let's move from here then. With this, let's talk about the progress that's been made, because there have been some real wins recently. And let's just talk about, at a very high level, 30,000-foot level, what things Phoenix Center began doing differently this last year, and then and where it's led. We'll let her explain the outcome.
Okay.
You start with some of the things that we did in the last year.
Oh, wow. Let's think. Well, for Sarah personally, we were just talking about this actually, and she spoke of it a little bit, was we believe in the strong CEO model, which means the CEO is out in the community raising money. And for Sarah, that was really outside of her comfort zone. But she's fabulous, y'all. She's fabulous. Just so proud of her, and getting out and talk to donors. I remember the first time that she called me after she had a meeting with a donor to make a really large ask. And she called and she said, "It went great. It was so wonderful. I enjoyed it." And from that point on, she wasn't, I don't think you were really nervous again after that. So that was a big win, because it has produced, and I'll let her, talk about that, but it produced relationships and major donors in her community. And it's a little bit of a transient population there, because there's a lot of vacation homes and people that are in and out, so it's been a little bit of a challenge.
Let's do this.
She's overcome.
And then we're going to turn it over to Sarah, because there has been, from what I can tell, we're approaching a big acquisition. They made a choice to invest in raising the level of visibility externally in their community. It was one thing to be serving these families, it was one thing to be transforming these kids, but they invested in capacity building by having a non-fundraising awareness event.
They did, yes.
And then we'll turn it over to her, and that'll be the end of the panel. Go ahead.
Yep. There were a few donors, that were in their world that had a small budget, and that's one of the things I love about the Stricklands, is that they look for a small organization, strong CEO that just absolutely explodes over the next years after that. But we Sarah decided, and the Stricklands decided that the best way to go about it was to throw a wide net, to really let people in the community know, outside of the few that were already in her world, that they even existed. And so we did have a non-fundraising awareness event. We had to change venues twice because we had so many RSVPs for this non-fundraising awareness event where people came. We had some great chili by the matriarch of the town that they're in, and heard about the Phoenix Center, and took an audience that didn't know, many of them didn't know about the Phoenix Center, and took them to the mountaintop at this event where we had parents come in and talk, and we told stories about the kids. Mabel, the therapy dog, was there. She's always a big hit. But I'll let you talk about what's happening now.
Let's see what the outcome is. I'll contextualize this. I'm about to give you platinum. In that, the individuals in the community and their names and their addresses, if we would do the smallest amount of due diligence, we can identify where the wealth set begins and ends in any community. We can all do that if we choose to. I think something that was attracted to the Stricklands, to Jerry, was that instead of having a plated fundraiser where we asked for $1,000 a table and $100 a head, rather instead, we cast a wide net. We invited the right people, individuals of wealth, to a non-fundraising awareness event. You know, the chief end of direct mail, or a special event, or a golf outing, is to extract as much money as possible from people without actually ever having to look them in the eye. That is the purpose of all these other fundraising mechanisms. Let's get as much money as we can without being in relationship. By having a non-fundraising awareness event that turned out to grow so rapidly, people wanted to attend it because the Strickland family was associated, everybody knew and loved Sarah, they all decided to join. People got to step in the universe and experience case for support, and the big acquisition needs to occur. They got to experience it in an environment that was safe, that was characterized by grace and propriety. They were invited, they chose to step into the universe because we went out of our way on the invitation to say, this is not a fundraising event. And what has that led to?
Well, before we started working with Amy and the Strickland Foundation funded our capacity building, we made about $220,000 a year in revenue in 2015. So to date, we've raised over $3.3 million towards our capital campaign and new facility, and that is really because we have not only increased our capacity and our fundraising, but we've brought people to the table to hear. We had powerful stories, powerful outcomes, but people didn't have the opportunity to sit at the table and know about us, know about what we were doing. We didn't market what we were doing because that was wasteful. And so no one knew about us. Very few people did. But we had always had powerful outcomes. We have an innovative approach, and we had powerful outcomes, powerful stories, authentic relationships with our donors, with the families that we're privileged to work with. So we just needed to market, hey, we're here, this is what we're doing, this is where we want to go. And Jerry Strickland and Patia and Megan truly believed in us, and to not only just fund a room or a program or project, but truly we learned how to fish and how to fundraise, and it's been inspiring, just the journey.
Okay, let me see how I can do this. Let me see how I can do this properly. This is our inaugural convention and expo, isn't it? Our governors have gathered for the first time. We are attempting to give you the confidence tomorrow to face these new guidelines and say, yes, we can. I guess some other president said that. Yes, it's okay. We are trying to build trust and earn the right for you to establish a new set of governing best practices that supercharge capacity building. Here we are showing with integrity. By the way, there was no rehearsal. We sat down with this, we reviewed these questions. These are spontaneous answers. Now, having said that about this panel, we have this issue before Jerry passed that our board of directors chose to issue the inaugural issuance of NANOE's Best Practice Philanthropist Award, to issue it to the Strickland Family Foundation. So let me say that previously, before some of the more recent events of the last 3 weeks, NANOE's board of directors was issuing its inaugural issuance of its Best Practice Philanthropist Award to the Strickland Family Foundation. We have made a decision since that time to change this. And it's a culture change, I think, that because of the way it's affected me, it's affected us internally, it's affected the Strickland family. Maybe it could even be the way that it affects us going forward. Because we could be caucusing again in 1 year or 2 years. And we will remember this moment. And in that, this family has walked through this recently, and we've been all now beginning to walk through it together. Here is the conclusion that we drew. This is no more and no longer NANOE's Best Practice Philanthropist Award. It will forevermore be the National Association of Nonprofit Organizations and Executives, Jerry Strickland Best Practice Philanthropist Award. And its inaugural issuance in 2017 goes to the Linda and Jerry Strickland Family Foundation. Would you please stand? Thank you. Thank you. It's wonderful. It's perfect. Okay? Okay? Come here, Megan. Guys, thank you. You're perfect. Perfection. And it all ended up deigning to our children in Phoenix Center, didn't it? Thank you. I'm so happy for you. Guys, give another hand. Thank you.